I was halfway through a work trip when my phone vibrated on the hotel desk. Motion detected. Living room. I opened my security camera expecting a glitch. Instead, I saw my parents inside my house, measuring walls, moving furniture, acting like owners. Then I heard my mother laugh and say, "Once everything is here, she won't make a scene." My stomach dropped. They weren't visiting. They were replacing my life while I was gone. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I closed the app, smiled to myself, and made one decision that would change what they walked into next, and nobody expected the ending. My name is Amelia, and for most of my adult life, I've been the stable one in my family. I work in a professional field that pays well enough for me to live comfortably, travel for work, and own my own home in Seattle. I never depended on anyone else to build that life. I built it quietly, carefully, and mostly alone, in my family that made me convenient. My parents always said they were proud of me, but their attention was never really on me. It revolved around my younger brother. He was the dreamer, the risk-taker, the one who just needed a little more time. And somehow, that time was always paid for by someone else, usually me. At first, it felt harmless. A few payments here, helping cover some bills there. Emergency support that was always temporary, always just this once. I told myself it was family. I told myself being generous didn't make me weak, and every time I hesitated, my parents reminded me how lucky I was to be doing well, how much harder things were for him. So I didn't make a scene. I kept my head down and my boundaries soft. I answered calls late at night. I sent money without asking too many questions. I convinced myself that keeping the peace was the same thing as being loved. My house was the one thing that felt truly mine. I bought it on my own in a quiet neighborhood and turned it into a place where I could breathe. There was one room I was especially proud of, a space I had poured time and care into, something personal that grounded me after long weeks on the road. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't impressive to anyone else, but it was mine. That's why watching my parents walk through it like planners, not guests, felt unreal. As I sat there in that hotel room, replaying the footage over and over, pieces started clicking together. The casual confidence, the certainty in my mother's voice, the way they moved through my home without hesitation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a favor they forgot to ask for. This was a decision they made because for years I had taught them I would accept it. I didn't turn the camera off. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and let the footage play again, this time with the sound on. I needed to be sure I wasn't filling in the blanks with my own fear. I needed to hear it clearly. My parents were standing in my living room talking to each other like I didn't exist. My father pointed toward the hallway, discussing what could be moved. My mother nodded, already rearranging my life in her head. They spoke in that calm, practical tone people use when they believe they're being reasonable. Then my mother said it. Once everything is here, she will not make a scene. She will just accept it. She didn't sound angry. She didn't sound guilty. She sounded certain. That sentence landed heavier than anything I saw on the screen, heavier than the strangers touching my things, heavier than the idea of my brother moving into my house without my consent. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't impulsive. It wasn't desperation. It was a pattern. They weren't worried about how I would feel. They were counting on how I always behaved. I rewound the clip and listened again, hoping I had misheard it. I hadn't. My mother laughed softly afterward, like she was sharing an inside joke, as if my silence was a reliable tool they had learned how to use. And she was right about the past. I thought back to all the times I didn't make a scene. When I found out money I sent had been spent on something completely different. When plans were made that involved my time, my resources, my space without anyone asking. When I was told it's easier if you just go along with it, and I did. I had confused being calm with being respected. I had confused generosity with love. Sitting there alone, I finally understood the cost of that mistake. This wasn't about my brother needing help. This was about my parents believing my life was flexible property, that my success meant access, that my home was an extension of theirs, that my boundaries were suggestions, not rules. What made it worse was how confident they were that I wouldn't fight back. I felt something shift in my chest then. Not panic, not grief. Something colder, clearer. For years, I had worked hard to be reasonable, to be understanding, to be the daughter who made things easier for everyone else. And all it had earned me was the role of silent backup plan. I closed my eyes and let the anger come, not explosive, not loud, but focused. The kind that doesn't rush. The kind that waits. They thought they knew me because I never pushed back. They thought I would accept it because I always had. That assumption was their biggest mistake, because for the first time I wasn't thinking about how to keep the peace. I was thinking about how to take my power back, and exactly when they would realize they had underestimated me. I didn't call them. I didn't confront anyone. That surprised even me. The old version of me would have rushed to explain, to argue, to beg them to slow down until I got home. But something had cracked open in that hotel room, and once it did, I saw the situation with painful clarity. Confrontation wouldn't stop them. It would only teach them to hide it better. So instead, I stayed quiet and started working. On the flight back, I bought the Wi-Fi and opened my laptop. I created a single folder and gave it a simple name. Inside it, I began pulling together records I hadn't looked at in years. Payments, bills, transfers that were always framed as temporary help. Emergency support that somehow never ended. Seeing it all laid out in one place was sobering. One payment by itself looked harmless. So did the next. But together they told a different story. Years of quiet expectation. A pattern of taking that relied on one assumption that I wouldn't say no. That's when it hit me. This wasn't generosity anymore. It was entitlement I had helped normalize. I also knew something else. My brother never did anything quietly. If he was planning to move into my house, it wouldn't be subtle. He would want people to see it, to admire it, to believe he had finally made it. And that meant timing mattered. I watched his posts, his countdowns, the hints about something big coming soon. He wanted an audience. He wanted validation. He wanted the moment to belong to him. I decided to let him have it. While they were busy rearranging my home, I was preparing something they couldn't talk their way out of. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't add emotion to the facts. I just organized the truth into something undeniable. For the first time, I wasn't trying to protect anyone's feelings, not even my own. I was protecting my boundaries. By the time my plane touched down, I wasn't angry anymore. The chaos I felt earlier had collapsed into something solid and steady. A plan that didn't rely on yelling or revenge, but on exposure and choice. They believed silence meant consent. They believed I wouldn't make a scene. They were right about one thing: I wasn't going to explode. I was going to let them walk straight into the consequences of everything they had assumed about me. I didn't park in my driveway. I stopped a few houses down and walked the rest of the way, watching my own home like it no longer belonged to me. Cars lined the street. Strangers moved in and out through my front door like it was a public space. Music thumped from inside, heavy enough to rattle the windows. The house I built to be quiet had become loud without my consent. I stood there for a moment and let myself feel it, the violation, the anger, the disbelief. Then I walked forward. Inside the living room was unrecognizable. My furniture was pushed aside. Lights were set up. A backdrop covered the wall. People I didn't know sat around casually laughing, drinking, acting like this was normal, like this was earned. My mother was near the center of it all, directing people with an energy I rarely saw when it came to me. She turned when she noticed me and froze. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "I thought you were out of town." "I came home," I said evenly. "To my house." She sighed like I was being difficult. "We're in the middle of something important. Don't make this about you." That sentence told me everything I needed to know. My brother was nearby, holding a phone, smiling into it like the room existed only to reflect him back. He was talking fast, confident, performing success. When he saw me, his smile flickered, but he didn't stop. "Guys," he said into the camera, forcing a laugh. "Look who decided to drop by, my sister Amelia. She's cool with all this, don't worry." I stepped closer into view. "No," I said calmly. "I'm not." The room shifted. A few people glanced at each other. My brother's smile tightened. "Relax," he muttered. "You're ruining the vibe." "I'm ending it," I replied. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. "For anyone here," I said, looking around the room, "this is my home. I own it." No one asked for my permission to be here today. My brother scoffed. You don't have to do this in front of everyone. I do, I said. Because this was planned in front of everyone. I turned to him. You don't live here. You were never invited to move in, and the image you're selling right now, the success you're claiming, was built on years of my support that you never repaid. My father stepped forward, his face red. This is a family matter. You're embarrassing us. No, I said. I'm stopping this. I opened the folder and placed it on the nearest table. These are records, payments, bills, support I gave over several years because I was told it was temporary. It wasn't. My brother tried to laugh it off, but his eyes kept darting to the folder. This is insane, my mother said sharply. After everything we've done for you. You've been in my house without asking, I said, measuring walls, moving my things, deciding my life while I was gone. Her mouth opened, then closed. I turned back to my brother. You wanted people to see the truth? Here it is. He stepped toward me. Turn that off, he hissed, nodding toward the phone. You're taking this too far. I'm not the one who took it anywhere, I replied. You did. That's when someone else walked in. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look angry. She just looked done. She held an envelope in her hands. I think this belongs here, she said, stepping into the room. My brother went pale. Why are you here? She didn't answer him. She looked at me. You should see this. She opened the envelope and pulled out papers. Not dramatic, just clear, official looking. This, she said, is a contract connected to a vehicle you claimed was fully yours, but the name listed as responsible isn't yours. She turned the paper so my parents could see it. It's Amelia's. The room went silent. I took the papers from her hands. I didn't need to read every line. The signature was enough. It wasn't mine. You used my name, I said quietly, without asking. My brother panicked. It was just temporary. I was going to fix it. You didn't tell me, I said. You didn't ask me. You assumed. She wasn't finished. There's more, she said, looking at my parents now. I checked. Accounts were opened in your names. Bills you didn't know about. Balances you didn't approve. My mother shook her head. That's not possible. It is, she replied gently, and it's already affecting you. My father's phone buzzed in his hand. He looked down at it, then back up at my brother like he was seeing him for the first time. You did this, he whispered. My brother backed away, shaking his head. I was going to make it right. That was the moment everything collapsed. Not because I yelled, not because I forced it, but because the truth had nowhere left to hide. I took a breath and spoke clearly. This ends now. Everyone who doesn't live here needs to leave. My mother rushed toward me. You can't do this. We're family. You stopped treating me like family when you decided I would just accept it, I said. She grabbed my arm. You're destroying us. I gently pulled away. No, I'm stopping this from destroying me. I stepped back and took out my phone. I'm asking everyone to leave, I said calmly. If you don't, I'll handle it the right way. People started moving, quietly, quickly. The energy drained out of the room. My brother stood frozen, staring at the floor. This didn't have to happen, he said. It did, I replied, because it already happened without me. By the time the house was empty, the silence felt unreal. The lights were still on, the backdrop still stood, but the illusion was gone. I looked at my parents one last time. You raised me to be reasonable, I said. You taught me to keep the peace. Today, I chose myself instead. I didn't wait for a response. For the first time, the house felt like mine again. The house didn't feel empty after they left. It felt quiet in a way I had never experienced before. No voices telling me to be patient. No footsteps that didn't belong to me. No tension hanging in the air waiting for the next demand. My parents didn't come back that night, or the next day. When they did reach out later, it wasn't to apologize. It was to explain, to justify, to tell me I had gone too far, that I should have handled it privately, that family problems weren't meant to be exposed. But nothing about what they did was private to me. My brother disappeared from view almost immediately. the confidence, the noise, the performance, all gone. Without access, without an audience, there was nothing left to prop him up. The image collapsed under its own weight. As for my parents, the reality they avoided finally caught up with them. Consequences they assumed I would quietly absorb were now theirs to face. For the first time, I wasn't stepping in to soften the landing, and I didn't feel guilty. I walked through my home room by room, putting things back the way I liked them, straightening, cleaning, reclaiming space that had been treated like it didn't belong to me. Nothing had changed physically that day. The walls were still standing, the house was still intact, but everything had changed in the way that mattered. I had stopped negotiating my worth, and for the first time, the silence felt like peace. For years, I thought family meant endurance, that if I stayed quiet long enough, things would get better. I was wrong. Family isn't built on entitlement or silence. It's built on respect. Walking away wasn't cruelty, it was survival. My home is calm now, and so am I. If you've ever had someone cross your boundaries and expect you to accept it just because you're family, share this story. You're not alone. And if this resonated with you, subscribe for more stories like this.